known you for a while now, and it's been nice knowing you, but to start this off then, I guess one of the things I don't think I've properly talked to you about, and I will say this with far too many people because I realize it doesn't come up as often, is how did you first get into writing poetry in the first place? Yeah.
I think I've always written a lot. Typical, like as a kid, I wrote a lot and just kind of kept doing that, but never really thought of doing anything with it necessarily. Just was kind of an outlet. And then I remember watching some spoken word online when I was about 16, 17 and thought it was really cool, but it didn't like spark some kind of, whoa, I want to do that in me necessarily. I'm originally from Amsterdam and moved to Glasgow when I was 19 and went to uni there. And in my 4 years at university there, I kind of got introduced to the student open mic that was starting up. Went there a couple of times, did some poetry, and then kind of started really getting into it. I think I love the audience interaction element and that feeling of being really nervous and then doing the thing and then coming off stage and go like, oh, I want to do it again. And next time do it better. And yeah, started with kind of met Ross through poetry and uni and kind of started going to a lot of poetry nights with him and started making more friends within poetry, and eventually just, yeah, I really enjoyed it and started getting bookings for shows and just kind of rolled into it like that. And it was kind of a bit by accident. And then at some point I went like, actually, I don't know what I'm going to do with my uni degree, but I can do this poetry thing. And then it kind of happened, yeah.
And then now going on the big side of things then, and always the fun question to ask poets especially, is what the hell even is spoken word?
So I think about this a lot. To me, spoken word is all performance-based art that is based in words. For me, storytelling also falls under spoken word. A lot of other types of oral performance. I think I try to use performance poetry instead of spoken word when I'm specifically talking about the poetry side of things, just to like clarify how those different categories and really carve out a space for performance poetry specifically. And I think, yeah, so performance poetry to me is poetry performed on stage with a bit of emphasis on performed. I do think there's a difference between a poetry reading and a poetry performance, and they're both great. And so is page poetry. But yeah, there was obviously the whole like thing of there is no difference between page and performance and stop focusing on the difference. Like, no, there is a difference, and that's great. I thought we were all about embracing difference, and yeah. So I like performance poetry a lot. I also like page poetry, but performance poetry really opened up that world to me, and I don't think I would have started reading poetry so much with that performance poetry.
Well, then now focusing in on you especially, then you've covered a lot of parts of the poetry world and the arts world, because obviously you perform a lot, but you also got your writing, and you got a couple. Is it one pamphlet out of another pamphlet on the way?
Yes.
Plus other things, the poems and other journals and whatnot. You've got the theatre stuff and all that kind of stuff. So for you personally, was it like an active choice to be like trying to keep your options open and be diverse, but where you go into it and just keeping that up, or was it just that came up and let's see where it goes kind of thing?
I think definitely there's an intentionality behind doing several different things at the same time. I think part of that is, this is my job and you can't really get away with doing only one thing. I could probably only produce and be fine, but I don't want to, because I also want to be an artist. So yeah, I think it's mostly, I really try to balance out how much I produce and how much time goes into that. I really enjoy it, so it's hard not to kind of really push into that and give other people the opportunities I always wanted, and then just forget about my own art and my own work. And I'm lucky to have found places for my work to go, like you mentioned, getting to publish stuff, and that's not something I ever really considered doing. I just really enjoyed performing, and doing shows felt much more like a natural progression for me. But then have been given opportunities to publish things and gotten a little braver with submitting my work, I think. And I found that now I find it quite nice, and it's getting less intimidating the more I do it. But I enjoy doing many different things at the same time. Getting to shift focus, massive ADHD brain, so that probably is part of that. But it doesn't feel like necessarily separate things to me. I think this is just kind of what that path for me looked like, and what I rolled into, and what it always kind of needed to be, to keep it interesting for me and to feel like I'm getting a creative outlet, but also helping other people out, which is really important to me, and using what I learn as an artist to help out other artists. And it feels really natural to me to do a bit of everything, to be able to be better at keeping sort of oversight over, you know, the scene in a whole, and what does it need and where do I go to help. And yeah.
Well, picking up on the kind of enjoyment aspect of stuff, because it sounds like you are enjoying a lot of it, but also you also got the professional side of it, and that this is still a scene you're working in.
Yeah.
For you, how is it when you're going to nights and events that you're not doing yourself? Is it, are you able to turn off the professional side and just enjoy it? How is that? Because I know, like, as the video person, everyone watching TV shows, always like, bad edit. I can see the bad edit there. Like, can you turn off the professional side and just enjoy stuff?
It's hard, definitely. It's hard because so much of my social life is poetry, and has been since I started out doing poetry. And it's hard to then go into a position where people want things from you sometimes. I think that's difficult to navigate. I've gotten a lot better at it, just being honest with people about, you know, whether I'm there to work or whether I'm there not to work. And even when I go to a poetry night not to work, like you said, it is hard to turn that off. And when I see someone who's really good, they go like, I'm going to keep a mental note and remember their name. But at the same time, I don't want to tell people that, because then everyone, like, when they see me, they go like, oh, you know, I'm going to try and impress. I don't want that, because I want to sit and watch poetry. And I love poetry so much. Not all poetry, don't get me wrong, but the atmosphere of it, and the kind of, yeah, the grassroots feeling of it, and the communities people create. And I moved to London from Scotland about 7-8 months ago now, and still kind of before lockdown split my time a lot between Scotland and London, kind of lived in between them, and kind of getting to know London better as a poetry scene, and or many different poetry scenes really, and getting, you know, kind of pulled into different nights has been great. And it has made it easier to separate it, because I don't work as much in London. I mostly work up in Scotland. So I keep my eyes open, but I'm not known as much as like producer Bibi here. So that's nice. And that's been really good to kind of get that balance back a little bit, and get to really enjoy poetry again as poetry, and as that thing that I got to know and really fell in love with.
So, like, in the enjoyment of poetry, I'm not saying give us your secrets in terms of what you're looking for in a client kind of thing, but nevertheless, like, when you get to a poetry night, like, what is it about a poem or a performance that kind of go like, oh, I like that? And like, I'll also expand that as well to even when just reading poems, like, what is it about a poem just in general? It's like, okay, this is a poem that's going to work for me.
I think they are a bit different for performance and page. I think because I know less about page poetry on a technical level, I'm more easily impressed, I think. In general, I really want to be surprised. I think I've seen a lot of poetry, and if something is really good but also not surprising, I often feel like maybe this person can dig deeper into what they individually can do that not no one else can, but that I'm really like, I don't know, I want to see people's individual like joys and things they bring to it, and leaning into the weirdness of everyone's fucking weird, right? So I want to see that weirdness. I just love weirdness on stage, not necessarily like being weird for the sake of being weird, but yeah, that really individual thing, and getting then to see the locality of their work, like who they're influenced by, and the places they've been influenced by in their individuality. I love that so much, especially, you know, Scotland, there's very different poetry from London, and you can still see the individual people, but also the places that they've seen and been, and that being surprised and being amazed by something, or like, oh, I'd never thought of that, or oh, I could never do that, something they do in their performance, or maybe they sing, or I want to see people do stuff I can't do. I think that's mostly it. I enjoy work that is that communicates a feeling or a thing that I felt but hadn't been able to vocalize yet, or hadn't, you know, thought of in that particular way. I love that, and that's what I try to do in my work as well. Maybe that's a bit egotistical to be like, that's what I want to see is what I do too, but again, sometimes people do stuff that I've never thought about, like that's really cool, even though I wouldn't, you know, sometimes even I don't particularly enjoy something, really, really deeply, but I can see it's really cool and that I could do that for other people. And I appreciate that too. I think, yeah, I've definitely gained sort of appreciation of skill and craft aside from my own personal loves as well, which you kind of have to do when you start working with people that, you know, you don't want to mold everyone to your own liking. You want to have them have their own individuality. And yeah, I'm waffling now, but that's fine.
So like I guess going in on that then, so like in terms of your own writing, then like what are some of the things that you tend to write about? Because like I feel like every single poets have, like, we try and write about a diverse set of things, but at the same time there are themes and stories we go back to a fair bit. So what are the things that A, you write about most, or B, what are you trying to do with your writing, in the fun question that is?
No, I love that question. I try to think about that a lot because I think it's important to like know what you are trying to do. I think I try to communicate complex things, really difficult to understand things in really simple ways. And I think that's what poetry is great at, you know, using words to make something really intricate seem really simple. And then it's like kind of you make this really small thing out of a big thing and then push it towards someone and go like, here's a small thing. And then they take it and it expands like a children's toy or something. And it goes into their brain and they start having their own thoughts about it. And it's a really great teacher, I think, and sort of teaching method, without wanting to be preachy or, you know, I don't want to over explain it either. I want people to come to their own ideas from my work. I tend to write a lot about myself and my experiences and trying to tie those to larger experiences that many people have, and how my individual joys and sadnesses and things I go through tie into the world. And sort of power structures a lot of the time. I read a lot about capitalism and how much I hate it. I read a lot about queerness because that's really important to me. My most recent creative project has been a pamphlet about prison abolition, related to my own experiences of having a brother in prison. And that was something I started writing about out of catharsis. And I think poetry can be great for that, but I never tried to make my cathartic poetry also my outward poetry that I have other people read. But this kind of really covered both, in that I was trying to come to terms with my politics of prison abolition and my feelings about my brother being in prison and everything that comes with that. And that was, it really felt like me coming to some kind of point with my poetry where I came to what I really wanted to be doing with my work. So that felt really good, and that will be coming out soon for everyone to scrutinize later this year. But yeah, it's kind of starting to feel like that's the point I really want to get to, which is I've always wanted to make work that other people find interesting, and I don't think there's anything wrong in wanting to appeal to an audience, as long as that comes from what you actually want to be writing about and not you just want to appeal to the audience. But audiences are really important to me, and being understood, and writing stuff that can be understood. I'm not a big fan of, personally not a big fan of really like floaty poetry that I'm like, I don't understand this very much. I don't want to feel like I'm just not getting it. I'm like, I like getting what the poet intended. So that's quite important to me. Communication, I think, is a big part of what I write and what I want to write.
Well, like, penultimate question, and then partly because you mentioned this idea of wanting to communicate with the audience and just in general the whole producer hat and all that kind of stuff. For you, I'm trying to think how to phrase this properly now, because again I can't do words. Again, for all the talking and all the words, I can't do words properly. But nevertheless, for you then, when you are just an audience member going to a poetry night, and not even about the poetry as such, but as an audience member, what are you looking for that will make you go like, okay, I like this night, I want to come back to it, this is the kind of night I enjoy? Is it the community? Is it something the host does? Is it what are the things that kind of get you to come back to a night?
I think other than interesting poetry, obviously, I think there's definitely something about, and that's something that's become more important in the past couple of years for sure, has been safeguarding and knowing that hosts are taking responsibility to create safe spaces and open places where people feel like they can sit and not experience negative emotions, or when they experience negative emotions, do it in a safe way. And that is something I think everyone is kind of learning at the moment, and has been a really big thing for a while now that people are trying to get better at. And it's been nice to see that happen. atmosphere, kind of leading on from that, I guess that then leads to a friendly and happy atmosphere. Not gonna lie, a lot of the time I go to poetry nights to then have a drink after, as do many people. I think, I don't think that's shameful. I don't think an open mic has to be the best poetry performance you've ever seen. I think it can just be, you know, you go and see some new poets and people trying out stuff, and then afterwards you chat to people and have a drink and have a dance. And I think that's just as important. Again, it's, you know, it's a grassroots thing. You want it to stay fun and happy, and to not take things too seriously too early on as well, to give yourself time to learn and grow. And that's always been it for me, like the people. And I love being able to go to different nights and not plan to see friends, but see friends anyway. And that element of it I really love and will always kind of enjoy and come back for, I think.
And now I guess to wrap this up, and to say we've been wrapping up all of these interviews again in the fun people that want to talk about themselves. Who the hell is Bibi June? Who is Bibi June? What are you doing? What do you want people to know about you? Yeah, who the hell are you?
I am Bibi June. I am so many tick boxes on the diversity forums. I am so many tick boxes in a professional sense. I am an artist, I'm a producer. I run a company called In the Works with my pals. We do spoken word theatre shows. I try not to be too definable. I, you know, like living in different places. I like doing different things. I like kind of covering my bases, and I like working with other people a lot, and I think kind of doing what other people come up with and then making that happen is something I really enjoy. I love poetry.